Okay, so get this. The U.S. trying to buy Greenland.
Seriously.
It sounds like something out of a movie, right?
Yeah, a political thriller or something.
Exactly. But we're taking a deep dive into this today.
Okay.
Our source is this podcast episode called Exploring the Unthinkable. And it really gets into why anyone would even think about this.
Yeah.
And it also shines a light on Greenland itself.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of us just picture, a giant ice cube.
It's understandable.
But it's obviously way more complicated than that.
Yeah, I mean, Greenland is 80% covered in ice. That's true.
Right.
But it's also home to about 56,000 people, mostly Inuit.
Wow.
They live in these small towns that are spread out across the island, relying on, traditional ways of life like fishing and hunting.
So you've got this incredible landscape.
Yeah.
And this really unique culture.
It's a stark contrast, right? This harsh, icy landscape.
Right.
And then this really vibrant, resilient culture.
And then on top of all that, you have this whole other layer, this idea of strategic importance.
Exactly.
I mean, why would anyone even want to buy Greenland?
Well, the location is key.
Okay.
It sits right between North America and Europe.
So it's right in the middle.
Right, and that makes it super important for shipping routes, especially with those Arctic routes opening up as the ice melts.
Because of climate change.
Yeah, exactly. And, think back to World War II.
Okay.
Greenland was actually home to U.S. military bases.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And that legacy kind of continues today with Thule Air Base still being active.
Huh. So it's not just about the land itself,
Wow.
but about controlling access and movement in the whole Arctic region.
You got it.
This is starting to sound a lot less like a crazy idea
Right.
and more like some kind of, strategic chess move.
Yeah, like a power play.
And then, of course, you have the economic angle.
Oh, yeah.
Under all that ice, Greenland is supposed to have all kinds of natural resources.
Right, we're talking oil, gas,
Yeah.
rare earth minerals, you name it.
In a world that's, constantly hungry for resources, I can definitely see why that would be appealing.
Yeah, it makes Greenland a very desirable asset.
Okay, so let's back up a bit. You mentioned World War II bases,
Yeah.
but this buying Greenland thing, this isn't a new idea, is it?
Not at all. Actually, back in 1946, President Truman offered Denmark $100 million in gold for Greenland.
Wow. 100 million in gold.
Yeah, and this is important. Denmark governs Greenland as an autonomous territory.
Okay.
So Greenland has its own internal government, but Denmark handles things like foreign affairs and defense.
So they have some self-governance.
Yeah, but Denmark still has a big say in what happens.
That makes sense. So Denmark said no thanks to the gold.
Right.
But obviously that didn't end the U.S. interest in Greenland.
Not even close.
And that brings us back to 2019 and President Trump.
Yeah, the man who loved a bold move.
His idea to buy Greenland definitely made headlines.
For sure, it was a big deal.
But it's important to understand the context, right?
Absolutely.
This wasn't just another Trumpian outburst.
No. The Arctic was becoming a hotbed of geopolitical activity because of climate change and the potential for resources.
So it wasn't just about owning some ice.
No.
It was about dominance.
Yeah, asserting dominance in a region that's rapidly becoming more and more important.
And it's all happening on a global stage.
Exactly. Think about it as the Arctic ice melts. New shipping routes open up. It becomes easier to access resources and potentially control trade.
Right.
Countries like Russia and China, they're already making moves in the Arctic.
And the U.S. doesn't want to get left behind.
Exactly. And because of its location, Greenland is a key piece of that puzzle.
Okay, so maybe buying Greenland wasn't so outlandish after all.
Maybe not.
But let's be real here. How likely was it to actually happen? Was the U.S. really going to add a 51st state?
Honestly, not very likely.
Really?
There were too many obstacles politically, culturally, logistically.
I'm guessing Denmark wasn't too keen on the idea.
Their prime minister actually called the idea absurd.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it caused some diplomatic awkwardness, and Trump even canceled a planned visit to Denmark.
Ouch.
But beyond that, remember, Greenland has its own internal government and a really strong sense of cultural identity.
Right.
They've been self-governing since 2009, so they make their own laws and decisions about internal affairs.
Becoming part of the U.S. probably wasn't high on their list.
Right. It wasn't a priority for them.
And let's be honest, integrating a massive icy island with a unique culture and a small population into the U.S. system,
Yeah.
that sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, exactly.
So the headlines about buying Greenland were attention-grabbing.
Yeah, they definitely grabbed attention.
But the reality was far more complex.
Much more complex.
And the chances of it actually happening were always pretty slim.
Very slim.
All right, so if buying Greenland wasn't a realistic option,
Right.
How does the U.S. exert its influence there?
That's where things get really interesting, because it goes
Yeah.
beyond simple ownership. Well, the U.S. keeps a presence in Greenland in a few ways.
Okay.
First, there's Thule Air Base.
Right, the one you mentioned before.
Yeah, it's a holdover from World War II, and it's still a really important military installation for the U.S.
So even without owning Greenland, the U.S. has this physical foothold there. It's a symbol of their commitment to the region.
Right, and beyond the military side of things, there's trade.
Oh, right.
The U.S. is one of Greenland's major trading partners.
So those economic ties create a kind of interdependence.
And influence, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that this isn't just a story about the U.S. and Greenland.
Oh, yeah, of course.
There's a whole internal dynamic within Greenland that we need to think about.
I was just thinking about that, the people of Greenland.
Right.
How do they feel about all this geopolitical stuff going on around them?
Yeah, it's their home. It's their future.
I bet they have some strong opinions about it all.
Absolutely. The Greenlandic people have a really strong sense of identity,
Okay.
and they're becoming more vocal on the world stage.
In what way?
Well, there's a growing movement for independence from Denmark.
Really?
Yeah, they want to break away completely and become a fully sovereign nation.
Wow, a new independent nation in the Arctic.
It would definitely shake things up.
But it also sounds like a huge undertaking, right?
It would be. What are some of the challenges they would face?
Well, economically, Greenland depends a lot on subsidies from Denmark.
Right.
So gaining independence means figuring out how to be financially self-sufficient.
That's a big one.
It's like starting a business.
Exactly. You need a solid plan to make sure you can stand on your own 2 feet.
What about just the practical side of things?
Yeah.
Greenland is massive.
Huge.
It has a harsh climate and limited infrastructure.
All true, building the institutions and systems they need to run a country.
Right, like government agencies, transportation networks, all of that.
All of it. That would be a monumental task.
And then you have the social dimension, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Greenlandic society is dealing with unemployment, social inequality, preserving their traditional culture while the world modernizes around them.
It's a lot to juggle.
So it's this balancing act between internal pressures and all these external forces.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room.
Oh, right, climate change.
Yeah. How is that directly impacting Greenland, both physically and geopolitically?
It's a big one. I've seen those images of glaciers breaking off and melting into the sea.
Yeah.
It's mesmerizing and terrifying at the same time.
It is. What are the long-term consequences of all that melting ice?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet.
Wow.
And that's having a huge impact on Greenland.
In what way?
Well, on the one hand, the melting ice opens up new shipping routes and makes resource extraction easier.
So that could boost Greenland's economy.
It could, potentially, but it's not that simple.
Right, there are downsides too.
Definitely rising sea levels threaten coastal communities worldwide.
Oh, yeah.
And Greenland's coastal towns are vulnerable too.
And what about their traditional way of life?
That's being disrupted too, as the ice melts, animal migration patterns change.
So climate change is a double-edged sword for Greenland.
Yeah, opportunities and serious threats.
And it's probably adding fuel to those geopolitical tensions we talked about.
Absolutely. As the Arctic ice melts and access to resources increases, the competition between nations intensifies.
Like the U.S., Russia, and China.
Exactly. It's like this high-stakes game of strategy unfolding in the Arctic, and Greenland's right in the middle.
So how are the people of Greenland responding to all of this? What are their hopes and fears for the future?
The Greenlandic people are incredibly resilient, and they're very proud of their culture.
That's good.
They have these rich traditions of storytelling, music, and art,
Mm.
and a deep connection to their land.
It sounds like a special place.
It is, but they're also facing challenges as they try to balance preserving their cultural identity with embracing a modernizing world.
It's like they're at a crossroads.
Yeah, facing some tough choices about their future.
You mentioned earlier that President Trump's offer to buy Greenland wasn't well received.
Right.
What was the reaction like in Greenland itself?
It's safe to say that most Greenlanders were not thrilled about it. Yeah, a lot of them found the idea absurd, even offensive.
I can see why it's like someone trying to buy their homeland.
Exactly. The proposal exposed this disconnect between how some in the U.S. view Greenland and how Greenlanders view themselves.
Right.
It highlighted how important it is to understand and respect the perspectives of the people who actually live in these places.
Especially the places that are being discussed and debated on the global stage.
Exactly.
So the purchase idea might have been a non-starter,
Definitely.
but it sparked a conversation.
For sure, it brought Greenland into the spotlight.
And it served as a reminder that the Arctic isn't just a geopolitical chessboard.
Right.
It's a home to people with their own dreams, aspirations, and right to self-determination.
Exactly. It's about more than just strategy and resources.
It's been a fascinating journey so far, unpacking all the complexities of Greenland.
It has.
But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have. There's still so much to uncover about Greenland's future.
And its role in the unfolding Arctic saga.
Exactly. And that's what we'll delve into more after a quick break.
Okay, we're back. And, it's kind of wild how we started with this whole U.S. buying Greenland thing.
Right.
And now we're talking about climate change and independence movements.
It escalated quickly.
It did. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, right?
Yeah. There's always more to uncover.
So as we look ahead, what are some of the things that could shape Greenland's future?
Well, climate change is obviously the big one. The melting ice sheet presents both opportunities and challenges for Greenland.
We talked about those new shipping routes opening up
Right.
and the potential for resource extraction. That sounds like a huge economic boost.
It could be, especially if they're serious about independence.
But it's not that simple, right?
Not at all. They need to balance economic development with environmental sustainability.
Right. They don't want to end up sacrificing their environment for short-term gains.
Exactly. It's that classic dilemma, progress versus preservation.
And then there's the whole geopolitical thing.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
The Arctic is becoming a hotbed of activity with countries like the U.S., Russia, and China all vying for influence.
It's a power struggle.
What does that mean for Greenland caught in the middle of all that?
That's the million-dollar question.
Hmm.
How do they maintain their autonomy and interests while navigating these relationships with global powers?
It sounds tricky.
It's a delicate balancing act.
So they need to engage with these countries, but also make sure they're not being exploited.
Exactly. They need to make sure they're not losing control of their own destiny.
So let's talk about independence.
Okay.
Is a fully independent Greenland a realistic possibility anytime soon?
It's possible,
Mm-hmm.
but it wouldn't be easy. They still rely heavily on those Danish subsidies.
Right.
So they would need to figure out how to be economically self-sufficient.
And then all the logistical stuff.
Oh, yeah. Building the infrastructure and institutions they need to run a country.
But, after learning about the Greenlandic people and their resilience,
Right.
I wouldn't underestimate their determination.
I agree. They have a deep connection to their land and a strong desire for self-determination.
And their choices, along with the actions of those global powers, are going to have a ripple effect throughout the Arctic and beyond.
Absolutely. What happens in Greenland doesn't stay in Greenland?
This whole deep dive has really shown how interconnected our world is.
It has.
What happens in a place as seemingly remote as Greenland can actually have a big impact on all of us.
We can't afford to ignore what's happening in the Arctic. It's a region that's changing rapidly, and those changes will impact the entire planet.
So what's the one key takeaway you would leave our listeners with?
I'd say Greenland is at crossroads. It's a place with immense potential, facing unprecedented challenges and exciting opportunities.
And the choices made by the Greenlandic people and the actions of those global powers will have major consequences for the future of the Arctic.
And for all of us.
Well, this has been an eye-opening conversation. We went from this crazy idea of buying Greenland to a deep exploration of this fascinating region.
It's been a journey.
So for everyone listening, this is just the beginning. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning. The world is full of fascinating stories waiting to be uncovered.